walking down the sidewalk in NYC with my wife. I saw a banana peel on the ground and was like, why do they always show people slipping on these? How slippery can they be? I then proceeded to put all my weight on it and totally did the legs flying up in the air, landing on my butt thing like you see in cartoons. I look up and my wife was rolling her eyes to the point that I think she was seriously wondering how she married me. Story 2. When I was a welder, we had a lot of people who thought using any kind of PPE was feminine, from old guys to brand new 18-year-olds. One day, a guy was using the squint method to do a vertical weld and managed to splash some of the molten metal into his eyes. He's blind now, and due to not using the PPE provided, he wasn't able to get workers' compensation or sue the corporation. Commenter? I worked on cruise ships for a while. During a dry dock, where they remove the ship from the water for 2-3 weeks and make all the repairs, my regular position was not required, so I worked with the team they hired to come on board to ensure safety standards. One of these guys would literally spend his day walking around the ship to each contractor who was not using PPE and showing them pictures taken of people very shortly after they had died due to misuse of or not wearing PPE while doing the exact jobs those people were doing. These pictures were incredibly graphic and absolutely horrific, but damn, was it an effective strategy. Story 3. Someone I knew wanted to open her marriage even though her husband didn't want to. He said he didn't like it, but wouldn't stop her. She couldn't find anything more than casual hookups while he started dating an ex. He's with the ex now, and they are getting divorced. Commenter? My aunt caught my uncle cheating on her with another married woman in the late 90s. They had been married for 10 years or so and had a couple of kids. At some point when she was going through the divorce, she met the other woman's husband, they hit it off, and after a couple years, they married each other. Around the same time, my former uncle married the mistress. The mistress had 2 kids as well, so the children shuttled between the 2 homes. 25 plus years later, both couples are still married. I can't speak for the other relationship, but my aunt's current husband is a great guy who treats her well, so I would say she's better for it. As for the kids, 2 are complete duck-ups and 2 are pretty normal and cool. I have no idea how they felt about it at the time or how they feel about it now. Story 4. When I was a bouncer, there was a small scuffle at the bar and I went to go steaming in. Workmate tells me to slow down. I don't listen. Ended up the guy fighting played for Leicester Tigers, rugby. And he absolutely manhandled me like I was a small child, I found out. Commenter? One time I was at an arcade bar in the Detroit, Michigan area back in the 1980s. This place was absolutely the worst for fights, but we were all dumb and it was still one of the best places we had to hang out. I was in the vestibule area by the entrance and I hear someone screaming that there's a fight in the parking lot. I'm thinking, well, at least it's not me. Just as this huge steroid monster bouncer comes running past me and charges toward the glass doors. Unfortunately, he charged right into the one that only opened inward and he hit that door so hard that the building shook. Knocked himself right the duck out as the poor in the lot continued to beat the crap out of each other. Good times! Another story. Just home from Iraq, thinking I'm the biggest badass in the world at a whopping 5'7", 165. Out at the bar having a good time and some dude starts getting really aggressive with a girl that was a friend of my cousin's. I said something to him, he starts squaring up. A few bouncers swoop in to walk him out, and the third tells me I need to go too. He was bigger than me, but not huge. And with my current inflated sense of badassness, I told him, if you're the biggest they got, you better go get help. He did, and they were, and I was literally carried out of the place like a slightly large toddler. Only slightly less than positive interaction I've had with the security staff. Story 5. When I was 13, a friend and I hopped onto a slow-moving freight train for kid reasons. Then we took a 7-hour ride through nowhere before it slowed down again. Mom was pissed about that phone call. Commenter? Probably about 35 years ago, for my buddy growing up. His mom got a brand new van and us kids were checking it out, and he thought it was cool. It had ashtrays and lighters in the back seat for when his parents had adults with them that smoked. The van was off and the keys weren't in it, and he pushed in the lighter, and when it popped out, it was white, so he said, "Oh, it doesn't work," and put it on the tip of his nose. He was Rudolph for a few days or a week after that. That's when we learned that the car doesn't need to be on for there to be power to some accessories, and they made some cigarette lighters in cars that didn't get red when hot. Story 6. One day, while I was driving down the road, I was punching my windshield lightly. Because it was making a funny sound, my buddy in the passenger seat. "You're going to crack your windshield." Me. "No, I won't." Windshield punch. Windshield. Crack. Me. Quiet. Story 7. I was a 7U at a kid's party, and we all walked down to the bodega on the corner for slushies. I finished mine, and while we were all hanging at the pool, I noticed an unattended slushie another girl had. I was still thirsty, and being a greedy little crap, I put the straw to my lips for a sip. I just didn't realize a bee was stuck upside down in the straw, stinger first. Stinger meets lip, swollen for days. Greatest story of karma I've ever encountered. Commenter. Almost exact same thing happened to me. But it was a can of Coca-Cola I left unwatched for a few minutes, and the whole bee went in my mouth when I came back for a swig. I distinctly remember the sensation of wings brushing the roof of my mouth before it stung me inside my lip. Still have PTSD to this day. Story 8. I was hitting a rock with a hammer as a kid. Well, the rock eventually flew up right into my eyeball. It took my family an hour to convince me that my eye didn't pop. Story 9. A year or so ago, I decided it was a great idea to try and fix my car's brakes myself instead of paying a mechanic. Watched a couple of YouTube videos and thought, how hard can it be? Spoiler, very hard. I ended up with a car that wouldn't stop properly and nearly rolled into a mailbox during the test drive. Had to sheepishly call a tow truck and spend even more money getting a professional to fix both the brakes and the extra damage I caused. Definitely found out on that one. Story 10. This thread reminds me of a funny story of my brother's. So when we were kids, our stepfather was really strict, and to be honest, a bit of a git. He had my brother digging post holes all day when he was about 10 or 12. My brother asked my stepfather for a pair of gloves to protect his hands, and my stepdad derided and ridiculed him. Oh what? You want a pair of git mittens? Fast forward several years, and my brother is a grown man and a foreman for a construction crew. As a favor to my stepfather, my brother gets him a job on his crew. One day they were digging holes or something, and my stepfather's hands began to blister and bleed. My stepdad asked my brother for a pair of gloves to protect his hands. Oh what? My brother replied. You want a pair of git mittens? He waited over 15 years for that moment, edited out a few typos. Commenter. Grew up on a farm. Stepfather was an ass. We were working cows. I was around 16. I don't remember exactly what we were doing, but I got kicked between the legs. As I was rolling around, he asked, did that hurt? After I could stand again, we switched positions, and that same cow kicked him right in the face. I'll never forget. He had on a brand new white Stetson that went flying off into the cow crap. As he lay there on the ground, I looked at him, asked, did that hurt? Story 11. When Pokemon Go first came out, first week, it was rumored that ghost Pokemon could only be found at cemeteries. The biggest one in LA should work. Thought so, drove myself there. As I was driving through, there were several funerals taking place. And I just thought how morally wrong this was, and I shouldn't be doing it. But I pressed on, found a hillside to park with no one around, and got out of the car and started roaming around with my phone. About 20 seconds into looking, I heard some pound horns blowing, and I witnessed half the hillside explode. Like giant explosions, trigger one after another 100 yards away. A giant wall of dirt and dust almost got me as I jumped back into my car. A few guys in construction outfits came up to a min later asking how I got there. I pointed out the roadway, to which they realized they hadn't blocked off. Story 12. My life is full of them, but most recently I decided to DIY a small bathroom makeover in my basement. Mostly retrofit, drywall, laminate flooring. 3 months and a couple of thousand later, it's still unfinished, and I need to hire someone to finish. How, you ask? Is this FAFO? My brother is a gifted GC who does not live close, said, man, it's tricky and can turn into a money pit quick, just hire someone. Commenter. I took part in group sex and got chlamydia. So yeah, quite literally having sex around and found out. Also, I went to one and got high to the point it damaged my heart. Luckily, my boyfriend realized really quickly that something was off and got me out of there. Group sex. When the hostess found out she was livid, she'd hosted several and never had a problem. She figured out who it was and banned them and let all the other hosts on the site know what happened. That incident was one of many reasons I left the lifestyle. Now I'm happily single and having a great life. Had an ablation to help with the damage and probably have to take a beta blocker the rest of my life, but I'm all good now. Story 13. When I was a kid in the 80s, around 10 or 11, I wasn't exactly the coolest looking. I had glasses and braces and straight, goofy-looking hair. I loved sports, though, and I was really good at baseball. Needless to say, looking the way I did, I took a lot of crap. One day, these two guys, Mike and Mike, invited me to play catch. I thought I was pretty cool because one of them was the principal's son and a popular kid. Other Mike was like hype man, popular by association, more or less. So I rode my bike up to the field and we eventually started playing pickle. They started acting crafty when I continued to get them out as runners. When I eventually queued up to be the runner, it started to get mean. I'd run and instead just tagging me. They'd smack me with their gloves or push me down when I was coming up on the base. The bases were big rocks, and at one point they pushed me down on one of them. I started to get angry and was crying a little bit because it really hurt one of my legs when I fell from the push. I told them that they should stop and that the next time they did that, I'd get really mad or something really lame because, again, I wasn't exactly a tough guy. They thought it was pretty funny. I probably would have laughed at me too. Sure enough, I queued up to run and principal's son pushed me down and I landed on the rock again. Something just snapped. In addition to baseball, I'd also been taking taekwondo and had just recently participated in a couple of tournaments. I had that fresh in mind as I got up and proceeded to punch Principal's kid in the stomach. I remember he made this breathless groaning sound as he doubled over. I kind of froze because I remember being just as surprised as he was that I'd done that. It was long enough for him to recover, and he started to come forward to try to tackle me, at which point I backed up and kicked him in the face, hard. His head snapped back and he just dropped to the ground yelling and crying. I turned around and saw Hype Man standing there with a surprised look on his face. Principal's son was screaming for him to throw my bike in the street or something idiotic like that, at which point Hype Man ran over to our bikes, but instead of doing that, he got on his bike and rode away. I got scared because I thought I was going to get in serious trouble from his dad, the principal, and my parents. I remember running over to my bike and riding home as quickly as I could. I was really upset as I told my parents what happened. My mom just hugged me, and I remember my dad just kind of smiling, not saying anything. The next day I went to school and nothing happened. The principal said hi to me as usual. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I'd also swear he gave me a look like, good job. He knew I constantly took crap. I ran into Principal's son, Mike, who had a pretty nasty black eye. As I walked up, I overheard him telling his friends he kicked my ass. I didn't say anything for obvious reasons, but from then on, he actually became my friend. Hype Man Mike never said anything, and because he was friendly to me, other guys who'd previously been mean at least stopped to a tolerable degree. Story 14. Was dating girl for about 3 months. She had a big, gentle giant of a Newfoundland dog. I got along swell with her dog, and so I absolutely thought I could dog sit for her and that she could trust to leave me the dog. She was going to her cousin's funeral, which was in another state, and would be gone for the weekend. I fed the dog, and had seen her walk her dog off the leash. And it would be very obedient, and never stray far, and was generally a slow walker. Thought I could do the same. The dog ran from me. Thought it was a game of catch. Made me chase it around for about 35 minutes. Finally got the dog back in the house. We had gone for a walk right after she ate, so all that running around made her throw up in my girlfriend's living room, all over her living room carpet. Not only that, it was a rainy week. Thus, she tracked in a crap ton of mud, and oh my, I never saw the dog drink water before. Newfies splash water everywhere. It gets worse. The dog was tired, and through all that bees of playing tag outside, I never actually saw the dog poop. So by the time I was done cleaning everything, the dog had pooped, lying down. So I smelt crap, yet couldn't find it anywhere. Finally lifted the dog's tail to see it had pooped. Was all over the underpart of her tail, and off course all over her butt. Took her out back and thought, okay, I will just give her a quick bath. I am a neat freak. And well, her paws were still slightly muddy, and if I was going to thoroughly wash her tail, and her butt might as well give her a proper bath with the garden hose. This was the worst idea. I had no idea it takes 6 hours to dry a Newfie. What the duck kind of breed is this? The entire time I thought never again would I ever dog sit any dog ever again, no matter how hot a girl is. FYI, I love animals. Have 3 cats and 2 mutts I rescued from the street. But that's today when I'm .37. The 22-year-old me back then just wasn't ready for that kind of dog care challenge. Story 15. When I was about 17, 18, I met a guy online on a little chat room forum type website. I actually ran an art shop on it and sold art. That's how I ended up getting to know him. Our conversations were fun, but I had no intentions of it going anywhere other than flirting. He had other ideas. He was really manipulative and loved to gaslight, but I grew up with a manipulative mother, so I knew how to defend against it once I spotted it. When he had had enough of my always being defensive and argumentative, he found my address and sent me spiked food and images of my house from Google Maps and told me he knew where I lived. I later learned that how he found out was through someone my sister was friends with whom she communicated regularly. He spun some story how we were trying to meet but wanted to surprise me early, so the friend gave him my address. I was so embarrassed and I didn't know how to tell my mom or sister. I knew better, yet I did it anyway. This guy got me banned from Gaia online by trading me items and then reporting me, saying I scammed him. I ceased all contact and removed myself from anything he knew I was involved in, but I was sure I had been careful about not revealing anything personal. I also played Guild Wars 2 back in the day, and I got a message from a random player. Turns out it was him. He acted nonchalant, and I was absolutely mortified to the point that I stopped eating. He learned of the games I played from that same friend that my sister hung out with and purchased the ones needed to track me down and found out my player name from that friend. When I confronted the friend, they did not believe me and said I was acting like an extreme feminist. This guy also tried to get me banned from W2, but I had contacted a dev, showed them everything from our past conversations and texts, even unrelated to Guild Wars, to prove I was being stalked. The guy was banned shortly after, and I told the friend I'd be contacting the police if they gave any more information about me or my sister. My sister cut contact after I told her what was going on. Eventually, the ex-friend contacted me through GW2 saying that I was right all along, that this stalker did it to other girls too, and he manipulated their friends into giving them information so he could follow them. Apparently, it had gotten way worse with the girl after me. I told him to go talk a long walk off of a short pier and never contact me or my sister again. I didn't tell my mom until after I moved out because the incident with the food was brought up. Story 16. Several years back, my friend and I were leaving a mutual friend's house and found a stray cat. The people who had been sheltering him had just thrown him out because he sprayed. My friend and I agreed to split the duty of caring for him. She would take him for the time being, and I would get him fixed and take care of him while he recovered, maybe permanently. Well, we got him fixed. And when he was picked up, the vet at the Humane Society gave very specific instructions to keep him calm, quiet, and not stress him out, because his incision was only glued, and he would be in pain. My family had taken in stray cats before, and we had dealt with plenty of cats post-sterilization. So of course we knew what we were doing, right? We took him home, introduced him to our two elderly and not welcoming cats, and let him have roam of the house. 3 days after we took him in, I woke up to my mom yelling at him and frantically calling for me to come out to the living room because he was freaking out and had attacked her. I made it to the scene, and he instantly pounced on me, tearing up my knee. I went to the ER for antibiotics. Mom ended up sick with cat scratch disease, and the cat went back to live with my friend, the only human he actually ended up liking. To this day, we both still carry the scars. Story 17. At work, I decided to step over a rolled-up carpet that was blocking the aisle. Instead of carefully navigating over or around it, I decided to jump over it. My toe caught on the stretch wrap, and I went knee first onto the concrete at high speed, split my knee, and was out of work for a month. Commenter. I got my finger stuck in a bottle trying to get more cream out. My finger quickly became swollen and purple. I had to go to the ER. Also, I had the rubber part of an earbud come off in my ear because I pushed it in too far. Couldn't get it out after like an hour of trying with the big tweezers I have. Girlfriend couldn't either, so I sheepishly walked into the ER. Told the person working the desk what I did. She sort of rolled her eyes and called a nurse or something over. He laughed and grabbed a small forceps and removed it immediately. I think they took pity on my stupidity because they didn't take down my info or charge me. An expensive stupid tax would have been somewhat justified. Story 18. When I was a teenager, I had a serious chip on my shoulder. One day, some guy got in my friend's face and I decided to intervene. Without thinking, I hit him. Back then, I was a wrestler and had the strength to match, so I completely wrecked the kid without much effort. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder, pulling me away from him. I turned around and found myself face to face with his brother. As it turns out, this guy was famous for being on the Olympic wrestling team. And for some reason, probably fueled by adrenaline or stupidity, I swung on him. What happened next humbled me instantly. He caught my arm mid-swing like it was nothing and just held it there. He looked at me with mild annoyance and tightened his grip ever so slightly. It wasn't painful, but the sheer strength in his hand, combined with how effortlessly he restrained me, made one thing clear. If he wanted to hurt me, I wouldn't stand a chance. I froze, realizing how badly this could go for me. I apologized right away, saying we'd leave. He just nodded and let us walk away like it wasn't worth his time. That moment stuck with me. It was a quiet, powerful lesson. Sometimes it's better to back down because there are people out there who could utterly wreck you if they wanted to. It's something I've never forgotten. Story 19. When I first moved to my place out in the boonies, I was warned repeatedly that my neighbors were unhinged lunatics. Much like Britta Perry, I thought, poof, I lived in New York. I was around lunatics all the time. I thought having good relationships with the neighbors out here was very important in case of an emergency. So I stubbornly went over with a pecan pie from Publix like I've seen people do on the movies, and I saw I assume, wife was out front watering a flower bed. I literally just said hi, and she turned the hose on me and soaked me head to toe, laughed, and told me to get off her driveway. Thankfully, they moved out last year, and not to go there, but the massive "Let's Go Brandon" flagpole was a literal red flag I ignored. Never again. Story 20. I worked in a nightclub. Someone attacked the bouncer and was ejected with a bop on the head and a "don't come back." The guy came back. He grabbed a lady inappropriately. 2 bouncers grabbed him and took him out the back door and beat the crap out of him and took his wallet. They took it into the police station the next day. Story 21. At 18, I had a real grown-up job and decided to splurge a bit when I got my first check. I bought a party tray of 2 dozen chocolate chip cookies from the local Safeway, if you know, and decided to eat some. Some turned into 24. I crapped my pants on the way to work, turned around and left, crapped my pants again on the way home, crapped for 2 days straight. I can't look at a chocolate chip cookie without feeling my butthole quiver. Story 22. I started bullying the only kid who was geekier and smaller than me in high school for one reason, and one reason only, to impress the one girl who lived next door to both of us. On day 1, he kicked my ass in front of the girl. Story 23. Tried alcohol and fell in love with it instantly. Suddenly, I was this very social, outgoing guy who could finally drink like my bigger friends. I was about 130 pounds at the time, without passing out by 9. Once a month turned into once a week, which eventually became every day. Alcohol, my best friend. I became a man escort and somehow managed not to get anyone pregnant or contract an send out. What I did manage to do was ruin a marriage by sleeping with a married woman very regularly. I also lost jobs, lost friends, and almost lost my life due to my addictions. I'm 5 years sober now, but some of the consequences of my actions are still hovering over my head. Story 24. Drove through a large puddle in the road going around 45 miles per hour. It was deeper than I thought, and a giant wave of water completely covered the windshield, and I almost lost control. Luckily, it was around 5:30 a.m., and nobody else was on that road, but it was quite shocking. Story 25. I went to a haunted house with 3 people my dad said not to go with in a neighborhood he said not to go to. They started a fight with 4 locals. 2 of them and 3 of us required an ambulance. I drove home alone and hurt without having any fun at all. Story 26. Back in 2015, second year of uni, we used to play on a school Astro turf pitch on the weekends. Technically not allowed, but PPL either went under a ditch or climbed over to get to the pitch. It rains a lot in Glasgow, so the ditch became a puddle, and I used to bring a saucepan to empty the water and go under the ditch. In April, when the weather got better, I saw PPL climb over, so I thought I'd try rock climbing one time to prepare. Then the day I wanted to climbing up one side was okay. The other side to get to the pitch wasn't because there was nothing for my leg to balance on, so I jumped down. Felt a scratch on my back, then looked at my right hand, ripped open near the wrist area. When calling the ambulance, I made the mistake of saying it wasn't life-threatening, so they said they'd take an hour. They carried me under the ditch, and then I walked with a friend to the emergency room. Was seen very quickly compared to others who'd been waiting for 4 hours. Applied the alcohol, which burned like heck, and then a temp bandage. Then they took me to an infirmary. For the 2 surgeons to have a look, they uncovered the bandage. Crap hit the fan where I could see the pulse beating. That night, lying before the operation was probably the longest night of my life. Had the operation. Then I panicked because they said I needed to have a second one. Right hand still not fully recovered, tendon damage, but grateful because it could have been a lot worse. Feels like I have PTSD because whenever I see AstroTurf pitch railings, I flick my right wrist. Story 27. When I was little, my grandma was supposed to be watching me but left me alone to go chat with her neighbor friend. I decided to climb on her dresser and jump across the maybe 2.5-foot gap to her bed, multiple times. I remember my tiny brain saying, "Okay, one more time before grandma comes home and gets mad at me." The last time I jumped, I missed. I cracked my forehead on her metal bed frame. 7 stitches later, I decided I'd probably not try that again. Story 28. When I was in middle school, my parents used to buy granola bars to have around as quick snacks for us kids. Well, one day they came home with a Costco-sized box of Fiber 1 bars. I had no clue what Fiber did. All I knew was those bars were tasty, and I had an insatiable appetite, so I went to town. The next day at school, my stomach was absolutely killing me. I mean, it felt like steel wool was ripping around my intestines. It was so bad I had to have the school nurse call my parents to pick me up. When my dad arrived, he asked if I had eaten anything unusual, so I fessed up to mowing through Fiber 1 bars. "Dad, do you know what Fiber does?" Me. "No, Dad." "How many did you eat?" Me. 6. Cue the absolutely maniacal laughter from my father. That was about 20 years ago, and I still haven't lived that one down. Story 29. I was 4. My brother had the flu and was getting so much attention. Attention I wanted. 4-year-old me proceeds to run out in the middle of winter, all but tea, naked, screaming that I wanted the flu. I got the flu. I did not want the flu. Story 30. My uncle gave me some ADS. I thought it would be a good idea to light them up and put them in a large fire ant nest, as a way to get rid of the ants. Turns out all it does is piss them off and make them airborne. I ended up getting a nice hot shower of fire ants. I don't recommend it. Story 31. My ex-husband is abusive. He thought he had devalued and abused me so much that I would beg him to stay after he confessed to having an affair. But I realized he had somewhere to go and told him we were done. He said that he didn't have anywhere to go, and I told him that he should move in with his mistress. She set me and my children free. I will always be grateful. He was very angry at me. He literally ducked around most of our marriage and found out. Also, we had to go to court for the divorce. And it was on the letter that because it was domestic abuse, he wasn't allowed to talk to me. He'd have been mortified that people knew and the law was telling him what to do with his property. Story 32. At 4 years old, my dad wouldn't let me watch my Roadrunner video for the 1,000th time that day. I said I'd run away. I actually got a long painting stick, wrapped a blanket around it, and put some food and a doll in it. Then I tried to take the actual video player, but it was too heavy. Lastly, I put my stick over my shoulder banana Whittington style and left the house. I got to the end of the road, 7 houses, before I got scared and returned. Story 33. I was at an amusement park on the boardwalk, Ocean City, Maryland, with a friend, and I wanted to get up on the Zipper. The Zipper is a ride that has been around forever. The individual cabins seating 2 are like sacrificial cages with 2 bars to hang on to for dear life. You move in a circle while spinning in alternate directions is the best way I can describe it. My friend Yvonne said, "No way." She insisted she would throw up if she did that ride. I advised her that neither of us had eaten anything recently, so she has nothing to throw up. I kept twisting her arm. She finally gave in, all the time repeatedly saying she's going to vomit. So we're on the ride, full stop. I'm laughing and screaming, and Yvonne starts vomiting. Here's what happens if you puke while spinning around on the zipper. The puke hits the mesh cage part and then flies back, lands all over you. Hair, face, clothing, everything. I was hollering for the attendant to stop the ride. Of course, that makes him keep going, and faster. Finally, when the ride stopped, Yvonne saying I told you so 100 times, I jumped off and ran into the ocean with my pocketbook on my shoulder. I had to get all of that vomit off of me. I walked back toward the zipper. The attendant was hosing off our cage. Story 34. New hire at work was running the press brake, a large hydraulic machine that bends metal. He was holding the part with one hand and letting his other hand rest on the bed of the machine. Hit the foot pedal. Top die comes down and folds the part. 3 different times he was told not to put his free hand on the machine bed. He would say okay, and after a few parts, go right back to doing it again. He got into a rhythm and didn't pay attention to where he placed his free hand. Instead of resting it on the bed, he placed it on the bottom die. Top die came down with 35 tons of pressure and his 4 fingers were crushed off. Story 35. After 9/11s, I enlisted in the Army infantry because I was gonna duck some dudes up that did this to our country. I grew up playing video games and watching war movies where war is romanticized. Instead of going to Afghanistan, I was sent to Iraq. After 7 days of being in Baghdad, my unit was caught in a massive ambush that took the lives of many of our guys and wounded a bunch more. This was when the damn around and find out started. I was on top of the Humvee the day of the ambush as a machine gunner and realized quickly that I was in over my head, that war was terrifying, that things can and will go wrong, that it doesn't stop when you want it to, that it's loud and disorienting, especially when RPGs are fired at you. Guys were screaming in terror. My ears were ringing, etc. We spent the next 8 months fighting insurgents and losing more and more guys, and it shell-shocked the crap out of me. Let's just say I did not re-enlist. War is not for me. And I carry those traumatic moments from when I was 19 years old to this very day. Sometimes I just shake my head in disbelief. It feels like it was all a dream. Ducked around and found out. Story 36. Back in my high school days, the principal decided it was a good idea to implement a book bag size rule with stringent size limits on both extreme ends. Now, I was the one kid who broke the upper limit with my large roly-poly bag. I had it listed as a medical device on my IAPP just to make sure I could keep it. The reason I could do this in the first place is another adventure. But the lower end, this is a high school. The youngest girls are 13. These girls menstruate. A lot of girls carry small bags with their pads and such. Now, the teachers didn't have any issues with this because it's not like they can hold it. What are they going to do? Well, the administration are sticklers for rules, and the bags are asterisk smaller than allowed. Needless to say, a lot of girls got their pads stolen. A lot of fathers find out. A lot of them are understandably very damn angry. 3 or 4 of them walk into the principal's office about 2 weeks after the rule was implemented. There was a very loud scuffle for about 15 minutes. Bags were returned, and the rule was never enforced again. Principal had a limp for the rest of the year. Story 37. I was swimming with a group of friends in a river. I wandered off upstream after smoking a cigarette and didn't tell anyone. All alone, high AF, I got in the river and started swimming with the current. It felt like I was supersonic swimming. I decided I'd had enough, and when I went to stand up in the shallow water, I was swept off my feet. Next thing I knew, I was in some rapids. I couldn't do anything, just observe my stupid ass get thrashed around as I was forced under, and watch huge rocks barely miss my head as I flew by. At that point, I was not expecting a good result. Just when I resigned myself to my fate, it all went quiet and calm. I'd made it through somehow, and was able to get on my feet unscathed and pale as a ghost, so my friends said, and I was right back to where they were. They laughed because they knew exactly what happened. Story 38. At a family barbecue, 12-year-old me was playing with a super soaker. Part of the college football team was there, some with girlfriends. I was messing with them, sniping them with the super soaker, and one got all pissed off. So, of course, I sprayed him again. I thought adults were not allowed to hurt children. So there I am, sprinting across the grass whilst giggling my ass off. This running back, who has well over double my weight, went psycho, decided to perform a flying tackle takedown straight to the center of my spine, and smeared me face first through 20 feet of lawn. I couldn't walk right for a month. Everyone laughed. I learned not to poke the tiger, and some adults were more than willing to inflict pain on children. Others think it's funny. Granted, it was definitely very funny. Story 39. At 18, I ordered a stack of fake blue 100S. The following night, on the drive home, I would occasionally throw a small grip of hundreds into traffic. Not 5 minutes into these shenanigans, a junk Ford Explorer with 4 heads deep starts tailing me and even speeding up with me. I drove around for about 15 minutes and couldn't shake the car. With my gas needle hovering above E, I decided to pull over and confront the driver. If only I had the chance to. The SUV pulled up hot with its rear passenger doors matching my driver's side and instantaneously opening up on me. In the dark mass of the back seat, I see the light from the end of a blunt being pulled on, followed by the barrel of a handgun emerging from the darkness. Without either of us saying a word, I handed him the remaining stack and the stack that was held on by headband. He peeked inside my car, hopped back into his, and then they sped off. I damn near became a volunteering Darwin, but in hindsight, my brain evolved in multiple departments. Story 40. Went on a hike with my family as a kid. I found an old metal bar and was hitting random things with it. When we got back to the car, lo and behold, I find an old Buddy 40 can. My old man was very specific about me not hitting it with the bar. Well, I did. The explosion was immediate and intense, and I was covered in old Buddy 40. I ended up riding home in the truck bed. Story 41. Hiking the Alps with a group when I was 12. We were on a glacier, and there were rocky breaks on it. I somehow got ahead of the pack with only the guide in front of me. He was out of sight as we gained elevation. When I got to the next flat rocky part and could see him again, he had already crossed the next section of glacier, so I looked for his footprints, but I couldn't find them. Since the hike had seemed pretty safe so far and he was already across, I decided I'd just start walking. Took 2 steps, and my leg fell through a hole and wedged my hip in the crack as the rest of the snow in front of me fell in to reveal the entire opening of the crevasse. I just turned around and yelled, "Don't go this way," and carefully lifted myself out, joined the middle of the pack, and stayed there the rest of the adventure, haha. Also the trip where I learned just how much the snow reflects sunlight back onto you. Story 42. Dated a mentally ill person who told me from the very start that they're mentally ill and that a relationship would be extremely difficult. They were right. Story 43. Went bowling as a kid. Wanted to know why stepping across the foul line was such a big deal. That was how I learned bowling lanes were lubricated, and probably what a pulled groin felt like. Story 44. Tried to fix a leaky faucet myself. 4 hours and 3 YouTube tutorials later, my kitchen looked like a water park, and I learned that plumbing is best left to the professionals. Story 45. Roughly 14 years old, before cell phones, smartphones, was shooting a BB gun in the desert, plinking cans and bottles in triple-digit weather. About a mile away, there was always a line of old freight cars on a set of tracks. Walked over and shot at them for a bit, and eventually climbed into one of the cars. The interior was shaped like a W, with the center crest only about half the height of the walls, and a dead coyote was chillin' at the bottom of one of the bays. Didn't realize I ducked up until after jumping in. There was no ladder inside the car, just steep inclines and vertical metal. Spent the next 2 hours repeatedly trying to run up the incline and grab the ledge to no avail. Sweltering hot and exhausted, I kind of resigned myself to my fate, same as the coyote. Tried again after another hour or so, and finally managed to frantically grab the ledge and climb out. Do not duck with trains. Story 46. I got stoned and found a Pinterest post about cat palmistry. According to the obviously reliable source, you can tell your cat's personality based on their toe beans. Adorable, right? Tried it on my first gentle cat and he was cool with it. He liked me massaging his paws. My second cat, only a few months into living with us, was less cool with it, but let me look at her paw. Finally, I tried it with my third cat. I got the crap scratched out of me. I let her run away and looked to my spouse like, yeah, that checks out. Story 47. Not me, but a few years back while driving to work and stuck in traffic, I saw a hideously ugly Honda Accord pulled over on the side of the road, surrounded by 10 cops' cars, 3 state troopers, and 5 unmarked SUVs. Absurdly and tackily tricked out. I'm talking gold spray-painted rims, every ugly decal from cash to dollar signs to crosses plastered all over the thing, like if Post Malone had transformed into a car like a transformer. The driver and I assume his girl were handcuffed and sitting on the curb, the man with his head down while the woman was practically screaming in his ear. I could see cops taking all kinds of guns and bricks from the trunk. When I got close enough, practically at a standstill in traffic 2 lanes over, I saw that on the back window of the car, in that old English font, was a bright white decal that said, "Duck around and find out." Story 48. I was a stripper, and my stripper friend's husband came around one night when I was off work, and his wife was out of town to see if I wanted a quaalude. I thought it'd be fun. They had 1 child and another on the way, so I thought it'd be okay. Woke up the next day, with my arms and legs tied up on a bed. I could feel the lube and wear and tear on my pussy. I became conscious slowly and realized he was sitting there watching me wake up. He untied me, gave me a fur coat, and asked me to leave my Sescorts there as part of his collection. I did whatever he wanted so I could get out of there. I kept working with his wife for a few months, at least after that. She never knew. He came to my apartment one more time, and I refused to let him in or speak to me. Looking back, I'm lucky I escaped alive. I never told anyone. I was so ashamed and scared, but I think about it all the time. He had lots of cess courts in his collection. He must have done that a lot. I'm sorry I didn't call the police, but being a stripper, well, story 49. I was living in a rental house and was raking and cleaning up the backyard. There was a lot of pine straw. I raked it up into a decent-sized pile and decided to burn it. Being all about safety, I had a pail of water close by in case it got out of hand. I lit the pile and had no idea just how flammable pine straw and pine cones really are. A flame immediately shot really high. I freaked and threw the water from the bucket. It did very little. I panicked, ran to the house, fought with connecting and dragging a water hose and made it back to the pile in probably a minute or two. Fortunately, I did not catch trees or neighbors' yards or houses on fire. Story 50. My neighbor was remodeling her attic into a game room. She had stacks of beautiful old furniture, including a Tiffany-esque lamp. She asked me if I wanted it, but warned me it was probably going to need to be rewired because it was from 1910 or something. I got it home, cleaned it thoroughly, and plugged it in to admire the glass panels. Great. Worked fine. Then I went to move it and touched the bottom while it was plugged in. The metal base was missing a part. The resulting shock gave me a glimpse of the afterlife, and I sat there stunned for about 20 seconds checking if my heart was still beating. Yes, it did need to be rewired. Story 51. I wanted to go out and play in the garden, but wasn't allowed. I was being a brat and took my scooter and started driving around the house. Fast forward, I was driving on the carpet. Someone moved the table that was on top of it, and a small hill was created, which I stumbled over. The scooter crashed on my arm. I also fell with my entire weight on it, and some of the things on the table fell on me too. I broke my entire arm. Story 52. As kids, my brothers and I were playing with hairspray and lighters to do the whole flame torch thing. Well, my mom found the supplies behind the couch one morning. She was wearing a soft robe. She wanted to show us what happened when we played with fire. She took the lighter and lit her arm on fire. However, the flames spread a lot faster than she anticipated, and her whole arm caught fire and she was freaking out trying to get it out. She sure showed us what playing with fire will do. Story 53. When I was 17, a group of other teens and I decided to play Red Rover, and I decided that if I went screaming full force, I could bust through the arms of two large football players. I assumed it would throw them off enough to let go, but what actually happened is the most extreme clothesline that ever happened. My feet went up in the air and I landed on my head. An hour later, I couldn't feel most of my right side and ended up in the emergency room and had to wear a neck brace for 2 weeks. I tore all the muscles on one side of my neck. Also, this was the same day my husband, then boyfriend, was shipping out to Iraq, so it was just a bad day. Story 54. Classic get kid moment. Throwing a small inflatable rubber ball at cars passing by on the street, trying to get it under the tires and pop, just for the thrill. Was literally mid-throw when I realized it was a squad car, too late to unwind. Plus he already saw me, so I had only one available recourse. Total commitment. So I got berated by a cop, joined by my parents, right in front of my house, in front of all the pedestrians. That was without exception the last time I threw or will throw anything at a moving vehicle. Unless, the juice is really worth the squeeze, like throwing change at the ice cream truck as it briskly speeds off, not having noticed you. An act of desperation, worthy of both consequence and reward. Story 55. Wondered if the ice was thick enough to cross the river. It wasn't. I'll tell you, being on the wrong side of the ice can really motivate you to move fast. Luckily, not a big river. Was able to get close to the bank and break back through there. Story 56. My cousin growing up had an Australian shepherd that was not trained properly. She was chained up outside pretty much all day and didn't know how to interact with people. Just barking and running as fast as it could before being yanked back by the chain. Well, one day the dog wasn't barking like crazy. It seemed rather calm and was wagging its tail. My brother and I approached the dog and it sat down and closed its eyes, awaiting pets. As soon as I reached my hand out toward the dog, it chomped my hand. My uncle wanted to beat the thing, but I told him it's not the dog's fault. He did a terrible job training it. Story 57. I had a laptop and the keyboard was shorting out. It would randomly stop working and you had to push down on it and it would start working again for a little while. One day, I couldn't get more than a few keystrokes before needing to push on it again, so I started pushing harder and harder in my frustration. Eventually, it culminated in me punching the keyboard only to watch the laptop turn off and refuse to turn back on. When I took it apart to see what was wrong, I found I punched it hard enough to push through the keyboard, the plastic frame below, and cracked the motherboard, killing the laptop. Oops. Story 58. Put some dry ice. We had some leftover as there was a party with a whole lot of Baskin-Robbins ice cream in their packages. On my arm to see how long I can take the burn to show off to my cousins. Well, it burned all right. Left little welts where I put them, which then started to blister and took a while to fully heal. As it was healing, I was in school, and a teacher took me aside to ask if everything was okay at home as she noticed the welts. And they looked like cigarette burns. The scars took years to fully fade. Story 59. I drunkenly accepted line after line of speed all night long without any idea of what it actually is. Was awake for 5 days before I could finally sleep for 2 hours, and then I was still wide awake for 2 more days. Had to go to a psychologist because I thought maybe I was in a psychosis. I'm glad I did not die from sleep deprivation, but I'm also kind of glad that it happened. It inspired what would be the beginning of my healing process when I many years later went into severe depression. Story 60. When I was a kid, I tested out if you use the electric car window opener, closer. I wondered how strong the motor was if I put my hand above the open window and then hit the electric close window button. Severely hurt my hand. Turns out the motors are strong. Story 61. Joshua Tree State Park, scrambled up a sheerish incline in Birkenstocks, I think, or another not good bouldering cess court because I'm not a climber, just a dumb 22-year-old. Partner got freaked out halfway up and ended up scooting back down on his butt. There were other people also frolicking up and down this particular boulder structure. I got to the top and thought I was such the spunky adventurer, smoked a bowl because I was in a beautiful park. I couldn't go back down the way I came because wowzers, it was almost like a slide and scary. So I picked going right. If I had scouted the whole thing from the ground like I should have, I would have known that it was shaped like a triangle with left being a relaxed slope down to earth and right being a huge incline with a steep end. My fafa was continuing when I came upon a part where my choice was jumping down over a point where it was nothing but air. Then I got to a point where I could not go further. It was just a cliff hundreds of feet above the ground. I had to go back, including navigating that spot I'd jumped down. So I had to Matrix-style crawl back up with my back and feet against the 2 walls while I scooted back up. There was nothing underneath me for at least 100 feet. It was literally that scene in the Matrix when they're in the walls climbing down, but I was going up with no climbing experience and just normal person cess courts. I survived that on nothing but extreme luck and adrenaline. Any mistake, and I would have fallen to my death. The whole adventure took 3-4 hours, just me trying to get back to ground level. This was pre-cell phones, 1999, so he had no idea where I was or what was going on and said he just kept walking around the whole thing, basically trying to see where I was up high, or possibly find me injured or dead somewhere on the ground. It was getting late afternoon, so he was also considering driving to find a ranger to ask for help. Looking back on this at almost 50, I can't imagine those 3-4 hours that he just did not know what was happening. I'm not even sure I told him exactly how close I got to really ducking up. I think he found out the whole story later, as I've recounted it to people over the years as a cautionary tale. In my defense, this was the late 90s. I was 22, and completely not aware that no one should climb anything without knowing what the duck they're doing. Also, to add insult to injury, on our quiet drive out of the park, because I was coming down from probably massive amounts of adrenaline, and he was probably majorly pissed. And we weren't saying much. I finally read the back of the pamphlet they gave us going in, which said, "Don't damn climb crap if you don't know what you're doing." Story 62. My sober alcoholic dad educated me and warned about the genetic likelihood, and probably saw personality traits, of the danger of my becoming an alcoholic myself someday. He started talking about it openly when I was about 10. Around 23, I started ducking around. I found out. The good news is that my dear father's education denied me any luxury of denial. Sober, 17 years now. Story 63. I was 4 or 5, fresh off training wheels. I saw a plastic baby doll in the middle of the sidewalk and thought, I'm going to run that over. Nope. Went face first into the concrete, completely SC'd up the entire right side of my face. My dad said he let out a curdling scream. The neighbors ran out to help because of his scream. I was fine, crying and scat up, but fine. Until about 14 years old, my right cheek was always pink, even after it healed. Story 64. 12 years old, throwing rocks with friends at windows in an abandoned building. We were competing to see who could get the highest window. I sling a beautiful throw rock sails all the way to the top window and cracks it rock. Then proceeds to follow the law of gravity all the way down to bounce off my head. Story 65. Ex-husband treated me like dirt, called me ugly, told me he was having pity on me by touching me, etc. cheated on me a lot. Boy, was he shocked when I gave him divorce papers. Now he is the victim, and I am so mean and taking his money to take care of our kids. Story 66. Decided I was tough enough to buy a house in a sketchy neighborhood and fix it up myself. The housing market tanked the next year, and the neighborhood went to hell. Oh, the crimes I saw? That time I was gardening in the front yard and a drunk man in a church suit took a knife out and threatened to beat my dog. Tip of the iceberg. I found TF out. Story 67. Challenged a friend to play gladiators on the monkey bars at school when I was 10. The one where you hang from the bars and wrap your legs around the other person to pull them off. Well, I took a foot to the crotch and needed inside stitches. I'm female. I still think I could have taken you, Ashley, you dirty fighter. Story 68. 10 years old. Just moved to Minnesota from a climate that never saw ice and snow. Was waiting for my school bus one morning and thought the bus sign looked so cute and fuzzy with ice. Went to lick it, had to tear a good portion of the skin off my tongue to get it off. Then had a weird lisp all day at school. Story 69. When I was a kid, I was not allergic to poison oak. I felt like such a badass running through poison oak with my friends staring at me like I was crazy. I would always come out unscathed. The last time I did that hello poison oak allergy, I fuffo big time. My eyes swelled shut and a rash all over. Story 70. I was in 4th or 5th grade at a Cub Scouts meeting. I was a very curious fellow, so I unfolded 2 paper clips and started poking around in an electrical socket. I eventually completed a circuit, and it was a wildly unpleasant sensation. I pushed in, fully intending to pull back, so it happened, and I felt like someone had belted my funny bones hard. I realized it was a very big mistake, and have been weird with electricity since then. Commenter. I took stuff apart as a kid. Electronics were my favorite. I can remember exactly never being able to get it back together afterwards. I loved circuit boards and tracing the lines on them, and looking at all the components, though, and wondering what they did. I learned a lot when I was a teen. One day, took apart a train set that had something that I'm still unsure the name of, but it looked like a strange little light bulb. The train set would emit sparks when you bridged the tracks with a screwdriver, which I had done so much that it broke the thing. I figured no loss with removing the light bulb and seeing if it lights up in the plug-in of my house, since batteries didn't seem to do anything to it. I put it in and simply remember a blinding flash, black smoke, my hands being covered with gray dust, the smell of ozone, and a distinct crack sound. I found out why they give don't play with electricity talks in school that day, but surprisingly no injuries other than the fear of God being put in me. Surprisingly, the light bulb thing seemed to be unaffected. I still have no idea what kind of component it was, despite attempts at researching it. It never lit up. It was in an opaque case. It simply looked like a light bulb. I pretended afterwards as a kid that it was a magic teleportation device, but never put that thing to any form of power again. Even batteries scared me with it, and one day I smashed it with a hammer, thinking that the magic inside of it needed to be broken for some reason. Story 71. Was about 15 years old and loved fires and stuff. Abandoned dirt bike in my communal backyard. No petrol, but I still threw a match in the tank. No hair or eyebrows for about a month. Lucky that was all that happened as the fire flew back up through the cap of the tank. Story 72. Thought I was smart by taking a shortcut through an alley to avoid traffic. My tiny Honda got stuck between 2 buildings because I misjudged the width. Had to call my ex, who's a tow truck driver. He still brings it up at family gatherings 3 years later. Story 73. So the story goes, when I was about 18 months to 2 years old, my parents had taken me and my older brother to a petting zoo farm type thing. I was chasing a chicken. Mom told me to stop, but I wouldn't. Well, now I have a scar above one of my eyes because the chicken pecked me out of revenge. Story 74. Ice was building up on my buddy's windshield wiper while we were driving. I thought it was a good idea to hit the windshield to try to knock it loose. It was not a good idea. Story 75. I didn't take my ex seriously when he threatened to get scary if I left. TBH, I don't want to blame myself, but he destroyed my life beyond repair. It's a miracle I made it out at all. Story 76. Tried to multitask by cooking, texting, and watching a show. Ended up with burnt food, a broken phone, and a plot twist in my show I definitely didn't expect. Story 77. Me, age 7, and playing around with a sharp pencil at the dinner table. I wonder if this is sharp enough to puncture skin. It was. My mom found me with the pencil just kind of dangling out of my palm. Story 78. I wonder what would happen if 11-year-old me took the sticky label from a lighter, stuck it to my thumb, and then set it on fire. Oh, that's what happens. It burns hot plastic and paper into your thumb extremely quickly. Story 79. At the tender age of 5, I thought the tweezers were the perfect shape to fit the outlet. That day, I found out how much force my dad had in his leg to kick me away from where I was stuck getting cooked. Story 80. I once ignored my friend's warning about trying a new recipe and ended up setting off the smoke alarm in the whole building. It was bad, but now I always double-check the oven settings. Story 81. Decided to climb a ladder to get Christmas decorations down, knowing my knee was sore. Ended up jumping into partner's arms and heading to hospital. Found out 2 tears in left knee and tornicle in right. Story 82. My friends and I grew up watching the Dukes of Hazzard. We thought you could jump a car and just drive away. It turns out you can't, and sometimes people hurt their spines. Commenter. Tried to skip a small step on a ladder and ended up falling off, breaking my wrist. Now I double-check every ladder before I even think about climbing. Story 83. When I was a kid, I decided it would be a good idea to throw rocks at a hornet's nest. I completely missed the nest and still got stung around 5 times. Story 84. I tried to pet a stray cat and ended up getting a nice scratch on my hand. Lesson learned. Don't mess with feral felines. Commenter. Oh, you never try to pet any cat when you first meet. Just hold your limp hand out as an offering and they'll either pet themselves with it, you can now attempt to slowly move your hand, or will back away. It's effectively a handshake. You'd feel weird if a stranger tried to put their hand on your face, right?